Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
Welcome to Shabbat Under the Stars almost. I have great faith that we will have stars a little bit later. I love these summer Shabbats. I gradually relax. Last week, I took off my jacket. This week, I loosened my tie. I promise that I will keep my shoes on throughout the summer, but if there's any way in which you can relax, whether it's through your clothing, whether it's, maybe relaxing, counting your calories, you do you. But the idea is for Shabbat that we stop trying to change the world, which it's kind of a contrary message, because we read the Torah, it's all, you should change the world, right? The world, there's injustice, there's hunger, you should change the world. And if you change the world 6 days out of 7, that's a pretty good record. The idea is that once we get to Shabbat, we pause and let the world be, and we appreciate it for what it is. And if losing your calorie counter is how you do that, go right ahead. If loosening your tie is how you do that, if taking your shoes off, heaven forfend, is how you do that, you go right ahead. Because because it was good enough for God to say, look, I did all this work, created the whole world, and I like how it is. It is very good. And so we're just going to stop and appreciate it for about the next 25 hours. One sentiment that we have as we go into Shabbat is this idea that, as we are ourselves trying to ascend from the workaday week into the sanctity of Shabbat, we also have helpers. We don't have to do it all by ourselves. We have each other, we have songs, and some say we even have angels who see us on their way. And when they come in, we welcome them, and we call on them to bless us, and then we send them on their way in blessing. And we commemorate that with the song that's on page 13 in your prayer books. Let's see, we have all sorts of great prayer books up there. If you would like transliterations, those blue paperback books have those in there, and the page numbers are keyed. So if you're on page 13, or even if you're not, please join us in Shalom Aleichem on page 13. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem leshalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech malachei hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu li leshalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. Mi melech malachei hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem leshalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yididai, dai, 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 da, 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 ya, da, 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 yididai, da, 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 ya, da, 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 Even in preparation for the sun going down as it gradually is, we are still going to increase the light in this space. And I'll ask our friends over here to light the candles for us. Excellent. The more the merrier. Let's see. Amen. Wonderfully done. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. We've officially ushered it in. And as I said before, this is a time of ascent, kind of leaving the working day and working week behind, climbing a ladder towards Shabbat. And some of the rungs we have on that ladder are songs to lift us up, starting with a psalm on page 50, 15, page 15. Lechuna Ranana. Lechuna Ranana Ladonai Nariam Letzor Ishenu Nekadma Fanav Betodam Bismiro Nari Alo Kiel Gadol Adonai Umela Gadol Kolam. Arbaim Shana Akud Bador Vaomar Am Toel Vavhem Vahem Lo Yadu Derachai Asher Nishmati Ve'api Im Yevon Elmenu Chati, page 16. Yai da da da, yai da da da, yai da da da, yai da 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 da, yai 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 da da da. Shiru Ladonai, Shir Chadash, Shiru Ladonai, Kol Haaretz, Shiru Ladonai, Baruch Shemo, Basru Me'yom Yom Yeshuato, Sapru V'goyim Kevodo, Lechol Ha'amim, Niflotav, Ki Gadol Adonai. Mural Me'od Norahum Al Kol Elohim La'im Yai da 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 Yai da 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 Yai da 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 So that psalm, and there's there are other psalms as well that begin with or include the passage, Shir Ladonai Shir Chadash, sing to God a new song. And I once asked one of my teachers, Joey Weissenberg, who's this incredible musician, I said, what, okay, it says Shir Ladonai Shir Chadash, sing to God a new song. Why do we sing this song every single week? Right? And so that seems to be a bit of a paradox. Jumbo shrimp, if you will. I don't recommend it. And he said, well, that's what it challenges you to do. It challenges you to look at the same song and hear it differently, sing it differently, try a verse you haven't tried before, try an instrument on it you haven't tried before. Or maybe see the people around you in a whole new light. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that later with Parashat Balak. How can we look at things from a different vantage point and find a distinct blessing in each one? So that's why even though we sing some of the same songs every single week, there's always a way that we can get something new out of them or put something new into them. Speaking of new songs, this is one of the newer songs in Kabbalat Shabbat. It's only about 500 years old. It's Lecha Dodi. It's on page 21. Lecha Dodi likrat kala yababai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala yababai yababai yadadadadai pnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor וזכור בדיבור אחד השמיענו אל המיוחד אדוני אחד ושמו אחד לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה כי מקור הברכה בראש מקדם לסוכה סוף מעשה במחשבה תהילה. Lecha Dodi לקראת קלה ידדי 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 פני שבת נקבלה. Lecha Dodi likrat kala yababai 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 pnei Shabbat kabela. O mikdash melech ir melucha kumitzi mitoch hafecha rav lach shevet be'emecha bacha vehun yakmom Naechem lo hidnari me'afakumi livshi bigdei tifartecha mi hayad ben Yishai vetalach mi korvai el nafshi kala. Lecha Dodi likrat kala yababai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala yababai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri hitoreri kiva orech kumi ori 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 shir daberi kevod Adonai alayek nigla. Lecha Dodi likrat kala pnei Shabbat nekabela. ויבא פני שבת לקבלה הולך אדוני לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה הולך אדוני לקראת פני שבת נקבלה לא תבושי ולא תקרמי מה תשלוחי ומה תהמי בך יחסו אני העמי ונבנתה עיר על תילה והיו למשיסו שועשייך ורחקו כל מבלייך יסיס עלייך אלוהי כבשוס מתן על כלה מלך אדוני לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה ימין ושמאל תפרוצי ואת אדוני תריצי היה איש בין פרצי ונשמחה ונגילה הולך אדוני We'll finish up this part of the service, this welcoming Shabbat, receiving Shabbat, Kabbalat Shabbat, with a special psalm. It's just for Shabbat. It says so right in the psalm itself. It's on page 23, and I just love the first couple of lines. It always makes me think of learning this song with Reb Mimi Feigelson, who's in Yerushalayim. Tov lehodot l'Adonai, Tov lehodot l'Adonai, ulezamer לשמחה עליון, טוב להודות לאדוני. One more time. ולזמר לשמך עליון, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולהגיד בבוקר חסדך, להגיד בבוקר חסדך, ואמונתך בלילות, ואמונתך בלילות, טוב להודות לאדוני, או להגיד בבוקר חסדך, להגיד בבוקר חסדך, ואמונתך בלילות, ואמונתך בלילות, טוב להודות לאדוני, טוב להודות לאדוני, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, טוב להודות לאדוני. Well, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. If you're just joining us, wow, there's so many more chairs here than when we started. If you're just joining us, whether you're in the room or outside the room or on the Zoom, this is Pasadena Jewish Temple and Center. We are delighted to have all of you here with us tonight. It's really great to see so many humans, etc. Really happy to have everybody here tonight. This is I'm going to just share a little bit about the Torah, and then we'll go back to singing some more. This is my favorite parsha. And I know I say that about a lot of parshas, but this one actually has a very special place in my heart. I'm going to bring this over here so everybody can hear me. We found last week people could hear me on Zoom, but Stephanie couldn't hear me right there, so I got this little thing here. So this parsha has a very special place in my heart, Parshat Balak, and not just because it's the most hilarious parsha. We'll get to that part. But many of you know that I'm in the family business. I come from a long line of, I'll say, ecclesiastical professionals, not necessarily rabbis. Shared with people last week, I was out of town. I went down to Texas to visit my parents and my sisters, and I was helping my parents move. And as they were going through things and deciding, what to put in their place, what to put in storage, my father had sequestered a couple of little items that he then surprised me with later. And these are two framed photographs that I'd always admired that hung in his office. And the frames themselves were older than me, much like, forget about the photographs. But he says, I want you to have these. And these are photos of my grandfather and my great-grandfather preaching. And, the silver quality on the photos is amazing, not to mention the yichus and the great feeling it gives me. And my grandfather was a preacher, my great-grandfather was a preacher. My father was also a preacher for sort of his first career before he became a professor. When he became a professor, they said he was, when he was a preacher, they said his sermons were too academic. When he was an academic, they said his lessons were too preachy. But one thing stuck with me. He said and I haven't found this yet, and God willing, it's a long time before I find this. He had this notebook that had notes from sermons he gave. I'm going to say back in the 60s. That would have been about the time. And he said the one that he remembered his favorite one. He didn't remember the whole thing, but he remembered sort of the theme of his favorite sermon. And he says, "You like this, John? This is from the Old Testament." And I said, "Well, we just call it the Testament." But he said, "My favorite sermon was on how he said Balaam's ass." That's a zoological term, so I know there are children here, but and it's like, "Oh, Balaam, yes, whatever." And that would have been, in our reading, Parashat Balak, which is actually not named after Balaam, but it's named after the king who hires Balaam. And not to spoil it for you, we're going to be talking about it quite a bit tomorrow, but there's a story about a talking donkey. And so Balak, the king of Moab, sees us passing through his land. And when and we weren't going to do anything, we were just passing through, we were going to pay for everything we ate, but other kings had not trusted us and had attacked us when we passed through. And I'll just summarize and say that ended poorly for them. And so Balak was scared, and so he hired Balaam, the sort of most famous magician in the area. Some people, soothsayer, sorcerer, you name it. But he had this reputation for being able to bless people and they would prosper, and curse people and they would not prosper. And so Balaam is on his way to do this, but God places an angel in his path to stop him, an angel with a sword, very dangerous. But he can't see it because he's already counting the money in his head. But the donkey he's riding on does. And the donkey stops in place. And Balaam is hitting the donkey. And he says, why are you stopping? We've got important business to do. And the donkey says, have I ever been in the habit of taking you to the wrong place? And Balaam said, no. What he should have said was, oh my goodness, a talking donkey. But he says, no. So, and then right then, God gave Balaam the ability to see the threatening angel that the donkey could see the whole time. And my father said he loved this story because it was a great parable that you can find truth coming from strange places, right? Sometimes the places we least expect. The people we least expect it from is often even more surprising. And donkeys, forget about it. And so I well before I had considered seminary, I knew that this story was a favorite story of my father's. And so the summer before I go to seminary, I'd been studying Mishnah and Hebrew with my rabbi for a year to get ready for seminary. And he said, tell you what, John, this summer we have kind of a congregant speaker series. I now know that's how rabbis get to take vacations. We have this congregant speaker series, and I would love for you to talk about, I would love for you to just give a sermon. I don't care on what, but let's pick a week for you. Balak. And he didn't know that was my father's favorite sermon material. And so I got to give my first sermon on that very same topic. And then years later, after I was a rabbi, I got to give that sermon again. Sometimes I give sermons again. I got to give that same sermon again in front of my father. And that's why this is my favorite parsha. But before, and it's a long story, but there is one thing that slightly related to that idea of truth coming from strange sources. It's this idea of perspective. Now, I don't know if you've cursed peoples before. I hope not. But if you're ever curious about how that works, you could look at this parsha, because it says when Balaam, he's like, look, okay, no promises on the cursing business. I'm gonna do my thing. I'm gonna open my mouth, and God's gonna speak through me. And whatever God wants me to say, that's what I'm going to say. So to Balak's displeasure, that's exactly what happens, except God keeps giving him curses to say or keeps giving him blessings to say instead of curses. But this is some of the inside baseball of let's say Iron Age magic. Um, if you're going to curse a whole people, you need to be able to see like a bunch of them. You can't be down among them. You have to be up in the mountains, right? And this is a very mountainous terrain, so you could get up on a bluff overlooking some section of the camp and curse them from there. And it said, and so what Balaam says to Balak, he says, "Okay, I'm going to go over here in this high place, and we're going to do a sacrifice because that's how they did shul back then. We're going to do a sacrifice, and after the sacrifice, I'm going to see what God inspires me to say." And so this is the important part. He got in a particular place, and he had a particular perspective on us, on our people, and he tried to work out a curse, and he just says, "You guys are awesome." I paraphrase it. And then so Balak is displeased, right? He's going to the manager. He's upset. So he says, "Okay, but I think I know what happened here. It's where you were standing. It's where we did the sacrifices, where you can see the people from. How about I take you over here?" And in some translations, this is like the hindmost part of the camp. As someone explained this to me, it's like, this is where the camp would have kept, I don't know, the latrines or the people they didn't like, right? This was not the prettiest view of the camp. He says, "I bet if I take Bilam to this place and he sees the latrines and the kitchen garbage and he sees people fighting, well, that might be an easier target. That might be an easier thing to engender a curse." So Balak tries to stack the deck. He says, if I can make him see the worst of them, then he will say the worst about all of them. I don't know if anybody else has ever done this, or if you've experienced that kind of generalization. If you take the worst part of a person, I don't know if, well, I've done it like 3 times today, but like, no, it happens is when we perceive situations, we delete information. We only focus on the one thing that really sets us off, and then we distort it and blow it up in our mind, and then we generalize to the whole thing. Well, if somebody, cuts me off in traffic, people are always cutting me off in traffic. If somebody corrects me, she's always correcting me. And so if he can get this deleted, distorted view and get Balaam to generalize, that's how we get curses. And it didn't work. Balaam still blessed us. And so Balak tried to change his perspective again and says, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take you to the highest part of the mountain so that you can see everybody. You have the whole Where's Waldo of the Jewish people out there. And if that's the case, surely he can find something. I know, right? Surely he can find something to curse. Even a peacock can curse sometimes. He said something very nice, actually. I don't want to disparage him. And so Balaam goes to this high place and he sees us in our entirety. And he can't help it. He blesses us. This is also my favorite parsha because I got to do it one time for an aufruf. This couple was getting married. And I thought, wow, this is the perfect lesson for 2 people about to enter a long-term relationship. Right? You're going to be together for a long time. The wedding's like an hour. Marriage is at least twice that. So you're going to be spending a lot of time together. And there are going to be days where you see each other at their worst. Right? There are going to be times where you're going to take this one little thing and you're going to blow it up out of the proportion, and that's going to be your whole experience of that other person. But if you could catch yourself, and it's hard, if you could catch yourself and move to a higher place and see that person in their totality, see your relationship in its totality, if you're honest, you can't help but bless. The truth does come from strange places. Disparagement also comes from strange places. The important thing is if you can get in that place where you can see the totality of a person, of a relationship, of a people, of a community. You might be in a community where there are these things that annoy you, and that takes up your whole perspective of that community. But if you can zoom out to a country, a world that has so many little things that are taking up all of our attention, if you could look at its totality, you can see Matovu Ochalecha, like how beautiful are all of its dwelling places. Shabbat Shalom, and thank you for being with us here at PJTC. We have multi-species conversation going. It's quite all right. That's the sound of them praying. So we're going to turn to page 28. Page 28 is our call to blessing, the Baruch Hu. So we're going to rise, and however you're able, and face east, which is that way. Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Umaviyom umevilayla umavdil ben yom uben layla Adonai tzavot shemo El chai v'kayam tamid yimlok aleinu le'olam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai Hamari v'aravi. You may be seated if you wish. Go a little faster this time. Page 29, page 29. Of the constancy of God's love. Avat olam Beit Yisrael Am ha'avta Torah u'mitzvot u'kimu mishpatim אותנו לימדת על כן אדוני אלוהינו שוכבנו וקומנו נשיח בחוקיך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ואורך ימינו ובהם נגה יומם ולילה יומם ולילה ובטל תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך ושרתם להיות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך uvisharecha. Read the passage in the middle of page 30 at your own pace. We'll get back together in just a moment. We're on page 30. We're on page 31 at the top, page 31. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor ber el bnei Yisrael v'amarta alehem v'asu lehem tzitzit al kanfei vigdehem ledorotam v'natnu al tzitzit hakanaf v'til techelet v'haya lachem letzitzit uritem oto uzchartem et kol mitzvot Adonai vasitem otam velo taturu acharei levavchem v'acharei nechem asher temzonim acharechem leman tizkaru vasitem et kol mitzvotai v'item kedoshim lelochechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher chotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lechem Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem emet ve'emunah kozo. Let's do sanctuary. We're on page 32, page 32. We bless God for God's nature as a redeemer. We remember a time when we crossed the sea on dry land and God redeemed us from captivity, and we shouted in spontaneous joy, who among all who are worshipped is like you, Adonai? Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. יפאר אדוני יעקב, וגלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה, אדוני, God Israel. When we say the Shema in the evening, we have one additional blessing that we add to it, and it's on page 33. Help us, Adonai, to lie down in peace and awaken us again, our sovereign, to life. Hashkivenu on page 33. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu v'shalom v'havidenu malkeinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu v'shalom v'havidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Ushmor tzedkenu uvoenu lechaim u'shalom be'ata ve'ad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Shalom v'havidenu malkeinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu shalom v'havidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Shalom, shalom, Baruch atah Adonai, haporeh sukat shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim. Page 34, page 34. V'shameru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam Israel, oti leolam, ki sheshet yamim asaronai, et hashamayim et haaretz, uvayom hashevi Yitkara v'yitkara shemei Rabbah Ba'ama divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei B'chayechon u'vyomechon U'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael Ba'gala ba'gala U'v'zman kariv v'yimaru Amen Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach Leolam olal me'al mayam Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipav v'yitramam v'naseh v'yitadar v'yitale v'yital shmei l'kudesha brihu leila min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'meru. Amen. We rise for the Amidah for Shabbat evening. This is a private prayer to say at your own pace, starting on page 35b, and even in your own words. When you're finished with your private prayer, you may be seated. We'll all get back together in just a little while. Say shalom bimruma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Conclude the Amidah with the Kaddish Shalem on page 48. Yikra v'yikra shemei Rabam, Be'alma dibra kirutei v'yamlik malchutei, B'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayei kol Beit Yisrael, B'agala v'zman kariv v'imeru, Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevorach, Le'olam olol me'ol maya, Yikbarach יתברך וישתבח ויפאר ויתרומם וינשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה בריחו לעילא מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תמירן בימה וימרו אמן תתקבל צור הון ובעד הון דכל ישראל קרמה והון דבישמעיה וימרו אמן יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל וימרו אמן עושה שלום במרומם הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל וימרו amen. We begin to end the service with Aleinu on page 51. Page 51. Rise as you're able. שמך היא, ולעולמי תמלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר, והי אדוני מלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד. Before we end a service, we always pause to remember with honor those who are no longer with us. Here at PJTC, we're marking the yard site, and that's the anniversaries of the passing of the following people: Abraham Axelrod, David Allen, Catherine Anderson, Michael Engel, Jack Ardman, Lena Berman, Frida Brightman, Florence Brewert, Stella Rose Breyer, Maurice Cohen, Irving Feiger, Fanny Feinsod, Robert Friedman, Netta Glickman, Sally Gottfield, Jack Candle, Ernest Klein, Benjamin Kleckner, Charles Collin, Jennifer Leonard, Edith Lichterman, Morris Mandel, Louis Marks, Lynn Mazer, Oscar Medina, William Meltzer, Celia Myers, Bessie Miller, Menachem Nehuston, Jose Procupez, Sarah Bessie Roth, Rose Roth, Yetta Siegel, Samuel Center, and Marcella Sally Tyree. If you have another name that you'd like to lift up at this time, please hold that name in your heart or say it out loud wherever you are. And I'll ask all those who are in mourning for anyone or marking a yard site to rise, and we'll say the Kaddish Tome, the Mourner's Kaddish together. We're on page 52, page 52. Let's pray together. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabbah, v'alma divra kirute v'amlich malchute, v'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mivorach leolam olalmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh Vitadar, Vitale, Vitalal, Shmei Dekucha, Brihu, Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, Tushbechata v'nechemata, Damiran bi'alma v'imru, Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba min Shemaya, V'chaim aleinu, V'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, Amen. Ose Shalom bimromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu, V'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, Amen. I'll ask everyone to rise. We're going to end the way we began, and that's in beautiful, beautiful songs. So I hope you'll sing with us, and then stick around for Kiddush, would you please? Odibo shalom aleinu, Odibo shalom aleinu, Odibo shalom aleinu, Odibo shalom aleinu, Odibo shalom aleinu. Shabbos, everybody. Thanks for being here with us at PJTC. We might have some announcements rolling on the screen over here in a second. Because I'm not going to say it. You did them already. Weston. Give it a minute as we pass some juice and wine around. All aboard for Kiddush, all aboard if we drink you want to drink. By Erev Boker Yom HaShishi, by Hulu Hashemayim V'Haaretz V'chol Tzevam, by Ha'ayim V'Yom HaShishi V'Lachto Asher Asa, by Yishpot V'Yom HaShishi V'Chol V'Lachto Asher Asa, by Vareg Elohim Et Yom HaShishi, by Kadesh Oto Kidosh V'At V'Chol V'Lachto Asher Bara Elohim V'Asot Sabri. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pari haolam.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishmer b'mitzvotav v'ratzah b'anu. Shabbat kodesh v'avot hidilanu zikaron l'maaseh b'reshit. Ki hu yom tehillah l'mikveh kodesh. Zeh letziat Mitzrayim. Umanu b'chata, v'tanu b'dasha, v'pohamu. Hoshana Koshana Idhakaru Arulakana Mekadesh HaShabbat. Finish that better with the husband. All right, those who wish to wash, you can wash here. Well, I can wash on people's behalf, and then we'll also have to wash and stand right at the Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishmer b'mitzvotav v'ratzah b'anu. Amen. Tehilat Yadayim.
Drum roll.
Good Shabbos, everybody.